Welcome back, my friends. Erika Gerena here, and I'm personally welcoming you to the Nonprofit Whisperer YouTube channel. So happy that you've decided to join us today. I hope that you liked the very first intro episode, and now this is kind of the more official first episode. And we're starting with a very important topic that I get phone calls for all the time, which is why when talking with Jim, my co-host, who you'll also get to hear from, we decided this is a perfect place for us to start. And that is, why start a nonprofit? You may be curious as to, how yours got started that you're currently serving in, or you're probably contemplating if it's time for you yourself to start a nonprofit. You see a need, you may be able to offer a solution, but it's a little bit more than that. So without further ado, let's get right to it. Welcome back. All right, excited to dive into today's topic. So in this episode, we're going to unpack a little of why to start a nonprofit. 1.6 million tax-exempt organizations in the United States. Okay, and so Jim, where do we even start with this? I mean, I know that this is the number one question I get asked all the time, or the phone call that I get. It's like, I want to start a nonprofit. Where do I get started? How do I start? And there's always like a series of questions that I go through. So I'd like to walk people through some of that.
Yeah.
What's kind of step one in answering that question?
Well, golly, it always starts with a problem. It really does. There's a problem that exists. And I used to have a colleague that used to say, what makes you weep and pound the table?
Mm-hmm.
And most nonprofit organizations are started because something made someone weep and pound the table, because it made them passionate enough to say, somebody's got to do something about this. Somebody's got to do something to solve this problem. And then they end up realizing, I'm that person. I need to be the one who exists to solve that problem.
Mm-hmm.
And that's generally how a nonprofit will get started. A successful nonprofit needs to crack the nut of, how can I do this? How can I solve this problem a little differently, a little bit more uniquely than anybody else? If you're going to go out there and try and solicit for funds from somebody, if they could just turn the table on you and say, well, there's an organization down the road that's doing exactly the same thing you are, and they've been doing it for the last 10 years. Why don't I just give to them instead of give to you? Well, your answer should be, well, let me tell you this. I do things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
We solve this problem in a different way. And that needs to be something we really emphasize.
And the thing that I'll add to that is assessments. Like, I am such a fan of assessing things over and over and over and over, and asking the question. It's like, tell me a little bit about your story,
Mm-hmm.
and what you've gone through, and how that connects into this thing that you want to do, because it's going to become a part of your story, and the why. You have to be able to explain that in such a clear way, right? And so really doing some sort of assessment and getting clear on all of that would be kind of one of the things, like practical steps to take in wanting to get to, okay, I don't know the problem, which is often what ends up happening. People call us and they'll say, I want to start a nonprofit and I want to do this. And they're so excited. And then you're just like, well, what do you want to do? It's like, I want to help women feel empowered. I'm like, that is
Right.
so great. How in God's green earth are you going to do that? What part of that,
And then you just get a stone face. They don't have a clue.
And then people often say, I think you discourage people more, like, from starting nonprofits. And that is actually true. I do discourage people from starting nonprofits, because I think the more you sit with it, and you realize the responsibility that comes with that, the more.
Well, Erika, we don't need more nonprofits. We need more nonprofits doing the right things. And so, yeah, you've got to really, assess that. And I'm the same way too. I would rather provide a reality check for someone than have them get into something they shouldn't go to. I've got a friend and a colleague in Atlanta, Georgia, who wanted to start an organization to help, in a sense, troubled youth. And I thought, oh man, not another troubled youth organization. And as I started talking, he let me know about some of the uniquenesses, that this was not just like, organizations been in existence for 75 years. And I thought, okay, he's doing this differently. This is an organization that needs to exist.
Yeah. And I think that, you have to know your giftings, your skill set as well. And that's why I say the assessment part is important, because it's saying like, what part of that problem do I actually want to solve? That comes natural and organically, like to me. So I'm not a CEO, or I'm not an executive director, or I'm not a fundraiser, or I'm not, I think that's always like comical for me. So I'm just like, do the research, because if it is such a problem in your area and in your region, it is likely that someone else is already doing something in that area. I had a similar situation. A pastor was sharing with me and was so excited about his wife going to school to become, I think it was like something of like a caseworker because eventually they wanted to, in their church, start a program for victims of domestic violence. And they said, oh, there's so much, going on in our community about that. And so we want to start something. I'm like, do you really want to start something though? Like, do you understand what that's going to look like? And something like domestic violence, which is like, you need to know the laws, you need to know the risk, you need to know the legal, all that other, and then you have to raise money for it. So I said, if it's a problem in your area, is there another organization? And guess what they told me? Yes, there is another organization, but they don't have a faith component. It's not faith-based, Erika. And I thought, it's not faith-based? Oh, you should totally start a whole other organization just because it's not faith. No, right. Don't do that. I said, you need to go to that executive director and you need to say, I have a training, or I have a course, or I have something that I can offer to you for those of you within the organization, the people you're serving, who are interested in this like faith-based course or this training. And so we would love to offer that to you or partner with you in an effort to do that. And so that's where I try to give an example to people. It's like, is it really a whole nonprofit, or is it really just a valued resource and tool that you can add on to an organization that's already doing it? And here's the biggest reason why, folks. You don't understand how hard it is to raise money in the same city for a nonprofit. And so when you come in thinking that you have the heart and you know better than an organization that's existed there in your city doing the work every day, what happens is you end up taking funds away from them that they rely on heavily. And instead of you doing now and serving as a help and a support, you actually come in as a competitor. And now you're not complimenting the organization, you're competing with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in fact, I when we were talking about the fundraising component of things, it's interesting. I've got a good friend. He and his wife started a program in the Washington, D.C. Suburbs. And it was essentially a program during the COVID to provide meals to teenagers who would normally be fed through, low income students would be fed through the school systems, through the hot meals program, and they're providing meals for them. And I asked him, I said, wow, it sounds like just an incredible program. Do you need some fundraising help or advice? He said, Jim, the money just flows in for us because the need is so great and people get it. He said, we've not had to do any fundraising at all. The need is so great that people just want to give to us. And that doesn't happen with every organization, but if you have the right need and the right answers, the right way to solve that problem, your processes, your procedures, you won't have a lot of trouble raising money. That's for sure.
Yeah, another thing that leads to that is the importance of being clear and consistent in your messaging, right? And so to start a nonprofit, once you can get like that assessment and you can identify, the problem that you're solving and how you're going about that, then you can get into the importance of being consistent and clear, like over a long period of time. It's almost something like I'll give you an example in a different sector. So like in government, you have to come already when you're applying for a grant, you have to come with proven work and that you've already achieved. So a lot of people don't know that. Like, let's say for an individual, it's very different. If I'm approaching a prospect, a donor that can potentially give to me, I'm writing a proposal and there's an ask there that is very specific. And it's saying, okay, this is kind of what we do. And these are different phases. These are different stages. In government, you have to be able to show when you want to receive a grant that you've already been doing the work for like 2 to 3 years. And you have to collect data. So being very organized in how you're solving a problem over a long period of time. So the consistency is actually very important in determining whether or not you are basically qualified enough and if you're worth investing into, because you're in it for the long haul and not just going to be here today and gone tomorrow. And so depending on what sector you're operating in, the approach is very different as well. But that consistency is very important in tracking your wins and tracking where you're succeeding and what comes natural and organic to you, and collecting the data and the stories and the information is absolutely vital.
Well, Erika, I feel like in a lot of ways you're not intentionally, but unintentionally teasing our next broadcast, which is in creating a mission statement, because from my standpoint, a mission statement is your plumb line. Everything comes off your mission statement. So you need to make sure that you have a very clear, concise mission statement. And if you are clear with your mission statement, it will keep you from deviating from what your objective is, your primary objective. Why was the organization founded and what do we hope to accomplish? Because what I hear you saying, and I agree with it 100%, is that too many organizations just dilute their mission. Somebody comes up to them and says, you're providing help for women of domestic violence, and we think you need to add on to that free meals as well for their kids, or that you need to bring on something, a program that they feel is related, and it can dilute your human resources and can dilute your finances, and get people, get an organization so diluted that it loses what its primary focus is. And that's one of the reasons why so many nonprofit organizations fail, is that they get so diluted in their mission, they forget what their mission was, and that's a huge mistake.
That's so good. So just as a recap, we're assessing ourselves, assessing the people around us, the community around us that probably we've already been interacting with. Then as a result of that, we're getting clear on the problem that we're solving, right? And then we need to be consistent in what that is. The last thing I'll just kind of let people know is if you want to start a nonprofit organization, the number one thing you need to do is go volunteer at one.
So good.
Go volunteer at a nonprofit organization and do it consistently. Yes. And then you will be able to see and learn and feel and understand what you're actually getting into.
Absolutely. You're so right. Yeah, I can't tell you how many individuals really thought they had a heart for something till they actually got in it and said, oh man, this is too muddy, too dirty. They had to roll up their sleeves figuratively, and boy, it just was not what they expected. And can you imagine if that person had started the organization and got people giving gifts and volunteers and everything, and then they found you're into it.
Yeah, that has happened plenty of times. And I
Yeah.
always say, like, everything looks so appealing. You do it a couple of times, it's like exciting. You feel good, they feel good, everyone's excited. But anything you're having to do day in, day out and manage on a daily basis, it's a different story. Now, speaking of distinctions, and in closing this episode out, there's something that you and I like will always want to be intentional, even as an example of our own kind of programming and what it is that we're doing and wanting to be intentional. The two of us are coming together. And I know, Jim, you always say it so beautifully that, we couldn't be two more different kind of people, right? And so
Absolutely. Yeah.
and so we talk about wanting to be distinct and the importance of standing out and the importance of like knowing how you're different than everything else that's out there. I want this kind of to serve as something like that as well, right? So I'm a female, I'm a Latina, doing this work for over 2 decades. And so have a very different experience in kind of growing and developing and evolving in this kind of world versus you, which you would say what about yourself?
I've got more years in the rearview mirror than I have in the front windshield. That's for sure. I've been down this road quite a bit. I'm not the future of nonprofit organizations. You are, but what I bring to this is, someone who is a seasoned veteran who has been, I've been in a number of battles over the years. I've been on the front lines. I've been, I've made more than my fair share of mistakes, and that's what I hope I would bring to this broadcast. There definitely, definitely a lot of differences with us, Erika, but there's also a lot of similarities. You and I both have the same heart and passion. We love nonprofit organizations. We love the causes that we serve, and we believe that we're going to make a difference in our world. We believe we're going to change this world, and that's where you and I can come together and take those experiences and share it with our audience.
So I want to challenge our audience as well. There may be something that's in your heart, some kind of project that you want to do. Even for myself and wanting to start this channel, I thought, okay, I could do that, but then I'm just another individual starting another YouTube channel for the sake of starting it. What opportunities may you have right in front of you that are so obvious to partner with somebody that brings a different perspective, that brings different experiences to the table, where if you collaborate together, it can actually be a lot more impactful and dynamic. And you can also grow and glean and learn from that. And it's better for those watching you. And so my hope is that Jim and I can model for you what we're encouraging you as well to do as the audience. And so until next time, have a wonderful day. We'll see you next time.
Take care.